Assalamu alaikum. Bajwari dua hai. I will go into the speech shortly, but I wanted to hear afternoon Vima and how are we feeling on a scale of 1 to 5, because you've got 5 fingers. I'd love to see and like I'll count down as well, so you can all do it yourself, so I can see whether I can be energizing or I can be calm. If you're super excited, then I can be calm, okay? So 1 to 5, and 3, so 1 is you're very low energy, so you need fun and more energizing, and 5 is you're really pumped and really excited, so you need a little bit of calm. Got it? So 3, 2, 1. Oh, amazing, okay. So we've got a lot of 4s and 5s, amazing, unless you're not being honest with me, so hopefully you are. All right, I'll jump into the speech, and I'm going to go in English today, but it might swap into Divehi sometimes, so yeah, I'll kick off. But really a real honor to be here today and so to see all of your wonderful faces. I have the privilege of sharing with you on the topic of strengthening your inner compass today. And on that note, not many people know that I write poetry. I wouldn't call myself a poet because I've never been trained to do poetry. It's just something I do to process what happens in life and leadership, what happens in family, who I am becoming, and also especially processing what it means to refine and really strengthen my inner compass. So I'll share with you something I wrote on the plane back from the airport opening event last night. So this was written literally very recently, so apologies if it's a little bit unrefined, but I thought it would be good scene setting and context setting for this session today. What does it mean to be born with salt pulsing in my veins? Ancient, aching, tidal. What does it mean for my soul to sway to the swish of palm fronds, as if the wind narrates wisdom? What does it mean for my chest to echo the unyielding currents of oceans? What does it mean to look up at the compass of stars and find Gaha, or the North Star, that my ancestors steered by, and feel their hands somehow guiding me? Lost, found in the vastness of time. Yet what does it also mean to need to be seam strong, like Timara, the tin-lead alloy, not forged but fused, soldered by heat until seam becomes spine? What does it mean to be rooted through brackish mud, like Kandu or mangroves, rooted, wide, breathing, to call the ancestors who thought they could swing a rope and pull hard enough to join 2 islands together, instead of calling on the ancestors who softened with the waves? So the inspiration for this poem, it comes from both my ancestry. My mum's family hails from Ta'atul Kandudu, and my dad's side of the family, and really privileged to have Dad here with me today, hails from Arduatul Huludu. And it is really talking about what it means to know your roots, know where you come from, and not just know it as a story that you tell, or when you meet people in the room here today, not just know it as something that you just say, oh, I'm from this island, oh, I'm from this atoll, but to really know what it means to carry that forward and the lessons that you learn going forward from there. So I'll ask, how many of you know the stories of your ancestors like that? How many of you know the stories of, how many of you know which islands your families are from? Most of us? Yeah, great. How many of you know stories that you can take forward into your life daily like that, of your islands? A few? Wonderful, yeah. So I think this, hopefully going forward, is to know not only where you come from and not just the islands that you're from, but to really know it daily. And I think that is the starting point and the foundation for who we are, because who we are isn't just this present moment in time, and it's not just us as individuals right here doing our thing, trying to study, get good grades, get a career, and survive on our own. Who we are is so deeply connected to family, to community, to land, to the environment as well. So with that starting point, I wanted to go into sharing a little bit of my journey so far and why I do what I do. I get a lot of questions. I was just sharing before. I get a lot of questions of, just now as I was sitting down, a friend was messaging me to say, I don't know how you make time for it. And also, I don't know how all of this is kept in your brain, all these separate compartments. So the first thing that I wanted to share was a story for, especially I can see there's a lot of high school students and potentially university students in the audience. So this story I chose, hopefully that will relate to some of you. So this is a story about, you have student unions, right? How many of you, you have elected student unions, right? Do you vote for school captains? Yep, you do. Okay, great. So this is a story about how I accidentally went into an election process. And if you, I don't know if you have good imagination, but if you remember or kind of remind yourself of me being a 16-year-old when I was really young, the 16-year-old me was terrified of public speaking. I was so terrified that when my mum would be driving the car and she would stop near a shop and just say, can you please go get some milk? Or can you please go get very few things from the shop? I would refuse to get out of the car because I was too scared to even speak to the shopkeeper to say, how much is it? Or say thank you. So for me to be having had, that was 16-year-old me, I turned 34 this year. So, in this journey for coming from that to today and being able to stand in front of you and be calmly sharing my story was nothing I could have imagined. But at the same time, because I know who my family were, and both sides of my family have gifted me with being people who really love to be of service to each other in our family, but also love to be of service to community and to use the resources and the privilege that we have to share as much as we can with the world. So it was with that and my deathly fear of public speaking that I saw an advertisement at university that said, I was an international student, it said, would you like to be the next international students officer? And I knew the challenges that I'd had moving to New Zealand from the Maldives. I was young, still a teenager, didn't have a lot of friends, didn't quite understand the culture. So I thought, what better person, and I was an older sister, so I was helping my young siblings as well. So I thought, what better person than me to try and help? So I signed up, it was just a form, and I signed up not realizing that you needed to go and campaign at university and put up posters and do really uncomfortable things. And also, the campaign period coincided with Ramadan. So campaigning was from in between lectures, from about 7 a.m., because that's when you could put up posters and go out and do things, all the way until 6 p.m. when lectures finished. And I was too terrified to talk to anyone, so I would just stand outside in the corridor and just try and hand, you've seen people on the street, right? Sometimes when you travel, try and hand you flyers. What's your response to those people? You try and ignore them as much as possible, right? No? Okay, we've got some really friendly people, wonderful. I wish I'd had those friendly people when I was younger. But most of the time, the university students were like, okay, let me walk past, why are you annoying me? I'm just trying to get to my class, right? And if you're really afraid of public speaking, and you're really afraid to put yourself out there, imagine how I was feeling, because I was constantly getting essentially rejection, right? And then a friend there's a really good friend of mine today, but it was how we met was just standing outside these corridors giving out these flyers, said, oh, by the way, the most efficient way to do this is something called lecture bashing. Never heard of it. So she was like, come with me. We just do this and it's fine. All you have to say is what you're running for and you just go away. And she didn't tell me what it was. She didn't tell me where she was going. She just said, come with me. And it was courage or audacity or whatever you want to call it. But my commitment was I'd put myself forward to this. I didn't know what it was when I put myself forward to it. But because I'd done that, that was my commitment to myself that I will see it through and see it through no matter what happened, right? So I went with her. It was a lecture hall exactly like this. And you see the side railings here, right? So in this lecture hall, it was in the library, so you came out through the back doors, and you wouldn't see when you came in where the railings are was wall. So I saw nothing as I waited for my turn to do lecture bashing. And when I came in, she said, "Oh, it's your turn. I'm going next, and it's your turn." I came in. There was a podium down the bottom of the stairs. I came in and walked into what is the first-year law students lecture, which was about 1,000 students, and I'd never done public speaking before that point at that scale. Do you think I did well? You do? That's a lot of faith in me. Yeah, there's a lot of honest people that didn't think I did well. I did not do well. I was shaky. I don't think I remembered what the position that I was running for was. Don't think I remembered my name, for that matter, but hopefully I did say something, and then I ran out as fast as I possibly could from there. But then, for the next 5 days of campaigning, I went and did lecture bashing every single day for every hour of lectures. I didn't get much better, but I remembered my name, I remembered my tagline, and I remembered the position that I was running for. And there was a lot of friends that I made along the way that have become lifelong friends as well. Do you think I won? You do? Okay. That's, again, a lot of faith in me, because I was running against, and I didn't know this until the very last day of voting, I was running against the incumbent who'd been in the role for 2 years, and I'd met her during the campaign trail. She'd not introduced herself to me as the incumbent. She was just talking to me about my taglines, and I was sharing with her my journey, which she then went and used in her speeches as well. And I'm not mad about that even today, but the really hard thing was we were waiting for the votes to be counted. And I lost that campaign by 7 votes. And it was the first time that I'd been brave enough, and I'm not sure I would have called it courage back then, because the only thing in my mind was what my parents taught me and sometimes pushed me to, which is you give a commitment, you see it through. And then when you learn the lesson after that, whether it's success or failure, you learn and you pick yourself back up and you try again, better with the lessons behind you. I didn't think I would do it ever again, because that was terrible. It felt terrible. I came home after the votes counting and I slept for about 12 hours and didn't think I would want to face all of the people that I'd met before. Failure is difficult, right, for us? How many people are comfortable with saying, I failed? A few people, wonderful. I love that for you. That's really important. At that time, as I think I was 18, 19-year-old, that was really, really difficult. But the next year, when it came around once again to have these elections, I didn't pick up the form. I just kind of ignored it. And then I was approached by this person that introduced himself to me as someone who helps candidates and make sure that the board of the university is diverse. And it was a really, again, a really close friend of mine today. It happened to me that later on I found out, and what he does today is that he's a campaign manager and ended up being a campaign manager for the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, as well, eventually. So that campaign that I did the second year round was a landslide win. It wasn't that I wasn't scared again, and it wasn't that I didn't put myself out there again, but it was that this person and a lot of people had seen the courage it took and the authenticity that it took for me to put myself out there and still fail and show up again. Yeah. So I'll say, as I end that story, that that's not the only story of failure in my life. Actually, there's many titles and many ways to describe myself. When the university asked me to share a little bio or how I would describe myself, that is the tip of the iceberg that you see is the success, but the rest of it is all the times that I've failed, all the times that I've learned lessons, all the times that I've gone home to my parents and cried and said, I don't want to do it again, and I don't want to put myself out there again, all the times that people have told me that I can't do it, all the ways that they've said, nobody like you has done it before, so don't try. And it's not easy to continue to do it, but I think, the first lesson that I shared was knowing yourself, knowing how you're rooted, as I said, with those wide-breathing, kandu-like, mangrove-like roots, to know who you are and to still keep sailing on, and to learn the lessons and really embrace, as there were a few people in the audience who are comfortable with failing. So I'll then go into the third piece of what I'd really love to share with you is facing criticism, right? And facing your perception of who you are is not always a perception of how you're received in the world, right? Do you think has anyone asked, either your close friends or family or even someone else, has anyone asked, how do you see me? You have? Yeah, great. Has that matched how you think you'll see yourself most of the time? It has. Wonderful. That's a lot of maturity, because showing up, we do show different faces, one, to the world sometimes, but also we show sometimes different faces to different people. And the reason I wanted to share this with you today is because there's a lesson around how you show up, and it's like I'm here dressed very corporate, right? I wouldn't go on site visits for our construction business dressed like this. So there's a difference in adapting to your context, and there's a difference between how you show up as the most authentic version of yourself in every scenario, so that you feel as close to who you are, but also as close to your values as possible. So I wanted to share a story about how I had a really difficult time on a board, and this is kind of lessons that keep showing up in my life, let's say. So I'm sharing a lesson that's a little bit further away, so the context is, some years old, and the people who are involved are no longer there. But I had the privilege of being on my first board when I was 21. So does anyone want to guess what the average age of a director on a board is globally? Just shout out a guess. Yep. 35. Okay, yeah. 27. Wow, yes. What? Any other guesses? 45, yeah. Any other guesses? One more, I'll take one more. Yeah. 80. Not quite. Yeah, if we take the average of board directors, we might get there, but at the moment it's 58.6 by some statistics, but generally speaking it's between 58 and 60, right, globally. So for me to have been on my first board when I was 21, and even today for me to be on the boards that I'm on at 34, some of them were very optimistic, so I would love to see some 30-year-olds and 20-year-olds on boards, because I think we bring a lot of great perspective, and the diversity brings a lot of great perspective, but we're not there yet. So the lesson and the story that I want to share is when I was appointed to this board, there was never, and I didn't know this until I was appointed, that it was a board that had existed from the 1800s. We met at this colonial home, if you can imagine. It was like a house that was built by the English when they were in New Zealand, and it had a lot of history behind it. You can imagine the weight of it. The board also looked after $1.3 billion of state funds. And when I was appointed, the people on the board, there were 15 of them. I was lucky enough that there was another young woman with me, but I was one of the youngest. And it was only when media called me that I realized I was the first ever Muslim person on the board. So what does it mean for you to be the first? I've shared this online sometimes, but for me, being the first is not something to be celebrated. It also means, of course, that it's more difficult for me to get my voice heard. I was also different. We would have all-day board meetings, so board meetings would start at 8:30 in the morning. We would finish by 4, and a lot of it would be really difficult conversations because, as I said, we're talking about spending and saving $1.3 billion of state funds, right? And how you spend it for community good, but also how you grow it ethically. And I remember we had this really difficult conversation once, and this was after COVID, where for those of you in finance, who's in finance in the room? A few? Okay, great. For those of you in finance, the others, I'll make this more layman's terms, but essentially we were invested around the world, and the investment markets meant that it was the amount that we could invest and give grants was becoming smaller because the investment markets were doing what it was doing. So we were having this debate around whether it was okay for us, and in the policy at that time, all it said was do no harm. So as long as you did no harm, which means don't invest in cigarettes, don't invest in weapons, don't invest in nuclear, as long as you did that, you were fine. But then we were having this debate about the policies that there were in place and what I thought was an opening to do harm in other ways. So that could be, I won't give real life examples because these are board conversations that are confidential, but that could be using resources that could push out people from other productive areas, being investors that are coming in from overseas and putting in investment into things that maybe are not well and not positive for the community and the local community. So eventually we were having this debate about do no harm, and I remember the tea break really vividly, and this was a gentleman who was more, let's say, as the guest was in the back there, who was more than double my age at the time. And he said, you know, there's no need to be so passionate about these things. You have to be realistic, and you're not going to change the world. You know that, right? And there's 15 of us. There's one of you. Maybe you have the support of the one other person in the room. But, you know, thank you for sharing. It was lovely to hear your idealistic perspective, but you're not going to change anything. At that time, it made me quite angry. At that time, I felt quite dismissed. But I've always kept the foundations true to say anyone who says we can't change the world is the problem. So we went back into the room, and again, because they're board conversations, I will not share what exactly changed, but let's say the policy that we implemented around understanding and defining harm and the ways in which we invest was changed. That is still the policy that they adhere to today, where I'm not on the board. And they have asked me to come back in sometimes and to share with them how these investment strategies can be done as well. So I share that to say that, you know, the appointment process was difficult. I was a foreigner, and often, you know, in a country like that, you are seen as different. And this was not a time where, you know, post March 15, there was a lot of attention on Muslim communities in New Zealand, but this was not a time where necessarily that was valued. So for me to be the first Muslim and a young Muslim woman of color in that context, it would have been easier for me to say, yes, sir, you know, to this old gentleman who had many listed board experiences, well respected in community, and to say, I will not disagree with you because I want to make sure that I hold my position, and I want to make sure that I'm, you know, not going to be removed when the term comes to an end. And it was difficult, and I was afraid that maybe I might be removed from that position because they want to move forward. But I will just say at the end of that, sometimes integrity can be difficult because it's not easy always to take that position. Because this is a recorded session, I will not share some of the roles that I have been removed from for standing up for what I believe in, so there is a cost That's not to say I'm being idealistic. There is a cost sometimes, but you have to understand, for me, the cost is that my integrity is between me and a higher power. And I will never compromise that, because for me to go home and to be able to sleep and to be able to be in conversation with that higher power and to think about life after is more important, and to be of service in the right way is more important than holding on to the position. And actually, I think that is how we change the world. It's a little heavy of a conversation, but I hope that the lesson is there, and I'm really privileged that I get to share it with you. And more than happy off the record to answer any questions as well. But I really encourage, especially all the young people here, to know and understand what your integrity is for you, because my integrity and how it shows up is very different. So what is your integrity for you? What does it mean for you to show up true? And then what does it mean to stand up for yourself? And then I'll move on to my fourth lesson, which is really around support, because we're not doing it ourselves, as I said at the start. We're all connected to each other, to our land and our environment, and to our families, and for us to do brave, courageous things, whatever form that takes, it requires support, right? So when you're looking at your inner compass, for me, the inner compass is about who I am, my legacy, my ancestry, my stories, but it is also about me being a good older sister, a daughter that looks after my parents as much as possible. As many of you might know, I moved back full-time about 4 years ago now to be in our family business. And those of you who know family business will know sometimes it's not that easy. But at the same time, it is about knowing who your people are in the corner no matter what. Who is it that is going to be there through all the changes that you go through? You might have some best friends in school that are there now. There are friends who I call fair weather friends, who really love to be around you when you're really happy and you're doing well, and they love the lightness and they love to, go for a coffee, go for an event, go swimming with you. But are they the real friends who will stay with you when you change and when you grow as well? Sometimes when you grow differently or when you take courageous steps, sometimes it's difficult. It's not to say that they're bad people, but sometimes it's difficult for them to understand because they know you as a different version of you, right? I lost a lot of friends coming into the family business. I lost a lot of friends that I thought were lifelong friends I'd known for 7-10 years because I've taken on the roles that I've taken on in leadership, because they understood me to be quiet. They understood me to be only an advocate for what I would say are vulnerable people. So I couldn't be an advocate and in positions of power because I'm a young woman and I dress femininely and, you list many things. But for them, they couldn't understand me in stepping into powerful positions. And it wasn't that they were bad people, but they just couldn't relate to me anymore. So I think it's really important as you grow to honor those friends. I still catch up with them and I go for coffee and fun times with them, but it's really important for you to know who's in your corner. When you change, when you take those difficult decisions sometimes where either you have to step in and make the change, or you step out, or you are forced out, you have to know who you can go to, who's going to be there with you as well. And I'll just share a small story as well, that the other day I was speaking to a lot of friends and people, there's a lot of people who have opinions about when people do things that matter. And I think opinions are important and sharing and listening is really important. But a friend of mine was sharing that one of the things that they noticed that I do really well is that I don't stop to respond to any of the feedback. Of course, I listen to feedback, but I don't stop to respond, especially when it's not constructive. I simply deliver. And this is for all the young people, as I've shared, if I look at board directorships or, people that make impact, I think many of us think we have to wait until we're a certain age or we've achieved something to step in and do something. But I say that there's no better time than now, because you never know what's going to change tomorrow. But also you never know where your energies and passions are going to go and change. So if you step into an area that you're really passionate about today, you can really make that change. So when I talk about that, if people don't expect you to be the one to do it or tell you you're too young, the amount of times I've been told you don't have the years of experience, you don't have enough experience, you're too young, you're too foreign. I spent many years in New Zealand being told I was too foreign, and then I come home here and I get told I'm foreign. That's me being cheeky. But yesterday there was a young woman who's amazing that I'm now going to be working with on some work with my foundation, who really respectfully said, she knows a lot about social impact because she's half New Zealander. So I don't mind it, and I don't mind correcting them that I am fully, very proudly Maldivian, even though I have ties to New Zealand. But people will always say things, and you can't correct them because you're spending energy trying to change something that you're not actually working on changing. You're not trying to change people's perception of you. You're trying to change something that you decide is your purpose, that you're really passionate about. So show up and deliver first, and the rest will speak for yourself and for what you show up for with your integrity, as I spoke about, with your story. And don't be afraid to show up that way, and don't be afraid to be present. And the courage that you need to show up when it's scary comes from those people who really have your back. For the very young school students in the room, I'd encourage you to find what I call was your personal board of advisors, not just your friends and not just your parents. I went through this exercise, and I'll finish with this. I went through this exercise for about 3 months, 1 year, and I was about 22, 23 at that time. And it was reaching out to 100 people, asking for advice. And all I asked for was 5 minutes of their time on a phone call, just to say I had a question. And I called or messaged or emailed people that I thought that I really admired. And does that feel scary to you? If you reach out, there's a lot of people who doesn't feel scary. It was very scary for me because one is that you might get rejected. They might think you're bothering them. But what I held on to was, if I didn't do it, that's status quo, right? Nothing changes. If they say no, nothing still changes. If they happen to say yes, then I get some advice and some valuable advice from a lot of people that I may never have reached out to. So I really encourage you to start building that board of advisors. That not to say that you'll find one mentor for the rest of your life and that's the person that you go to. You have a variety of people. I have people who advise me on my personal life, on integrity. There's people who advise me on my board positions. There's people who advise me on my social impact. There's people who advise me on business. And these people change, but I still reach out to them. So I really encourage you to reach out to them. And that is also why, even though my Instagram is available in public and I do have access to it, if you message me, I might not get back to you immediately, but I do have a team that goes through, and especially if there are young people who message me, I do respond, and I do make that time because I got the privilege of being mentored. So this is the lesson that I'd love to end on is, even today, if there's something valuable that you have heard here, share it. It is whatever privilege we receive, whatever gifts that we receive, the impact that we're able to make doesn't have legacy, and it doesn't have roots and seeds if you don't share it with people who may not have had the opportunity to share it with. So even though I'm super busy and I have multiple portfolios, the important thing is to make sure that you're able to find the time to give back, to be of service in whatever form that takes as well. And to honor, I guess, your communities in the way that you want to. The very, very last piece that I wanted to share with you as I end is I think it's a haribas or a muskulibas. My mum will correct me, but I can never remember. but it was something my maternal grandfather used to say all the time. And my mum actually gave me for my 30th birthday, I'm going to say this in Tivehi, but it's jardi engilavadato. Like, it was like a big kind of jar that you used to have outside homes and things like that. So she actually gave me the physical one. Usually it's filled with water so that you wash before you enter the home. But she gave me one that was filled with pebbles so that it's stable. And you hear this saying that goes, it's not to say you have to be full of yourself, by the way. That's not what it says. Sorry. Sorry to the people who love to have that kind of interpretation. It is to know everything I've shared, knowing your history, knowing what you stand for, knowing what you're going after, knowing the people who's behind you, who's really in your corner. Those are the pebbles that you have in your jar, so that when headwinds come, when challenges come, when critics come, when you fail, that is what keeps you standing and steady, and so you can go and try again. So I wanted to end with that. There's many more stories that I can share, but I really wanted to, because there's a wonderful audience here today. I wanted to stop there and provide some opportunity for sharing any questions that you have from the room as well, and I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much.